cool.
So, yes, welcome to Into the Pit. We're here tonight with Alan Tecchio wow, the list goes on. Hades, Watchtower, nonfiction, Silent Assassins.
Level Fields.
Wow. Am I missing something?
Probably. I mean, there's a long list. 7 Witches.
7 Witches, correct. Yes. Heathen's Rage.
Yeah, well, technically I wasn't really in that band, but yeah, we did a few shows a few years ago. And I just talked to Mike LaPone today, actually. He's getting ready they're practicing right at this very moment, Symphony X, for their upcoming tour.
Right. Alan, are you into motorcycles?
I am. Yeah. I'm a big MotoGP fan, hence the shirt.
Okay, and do you ride yourself?
I do. I have a Yamaha FJ09, and I don't do it anymore. For 14 years, I was a motorcycle safety instructor here in New Jersey.
Awesome. Wow. No, I'm also into motorcycling.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
What do you have?
I've got a ZX12R Ninja.
Oh, nice.
Kawasaki, yeah. No, I picked that up for like next to nothing, and wow, it was the original gold-black finish. I was just like, okay, here we go.
That's a cool bike. That's a cool bike.
So, Alan, it's been a crazy time. I find myself starting most of the interviews with this topic, but wow, we can't get around it really. It's been years of COVID now, and just as we thought that we have that behind us, we're heading for the next disaster, apparently. But let's first things first. How was the COVID time period for you?
Well, I mean, like for everyone, right? I definitely drank too much. I did escape New Jersey, and I went down. My dad at the time was, I think, 92 years old. He's 94 now, but he lives alone down there. So I went down there and spent like a month with him, and then, I didn't get a lot of work done, because everything was kind of on hold. But we made it through, and I can't believe it's been 2 years. It's like crazy.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's been a wild time, though, because a lot of people had problems dealing with the isolation, and it's because it's been also quite strict here in Germany. And but on the other hand, it's got pros and cons. I felt that it gave me time to focus on things that I had neglected for so many years, because you're just in the rat race. You just.
I get that.
Kind of wild.
I actually started writing a book with photographer Frank White called Jersey Metal, and it's going to carry from 1969 until 1994 anything and everything related to heavy metal. And if it goes well, we'll do a second book from 95 to like 2021. But I'm in like June or July of 1986 right now in the book, and I'm already at like page 310. So it's going to be a pretty big book, and I'm not sure when we're going to be done with it. But to your point, that's something that we kind of really got going during COVID, because, we could do it remotely, and we could take the chance of getting together, just Frank and I, and working on it. And thankfully, actually, I don't think I gave him COVID, but we both had COVID at some point, and unfortunately survived,
So, but you don't have a release date yet for the book or anything like that?
No, we're going to self-publish it through BookBaby. I'm doing all the editing and all the layout, and now I'm starting to do quite a bit of the writing, because it's in the 80s. This is when I did like the first Hades record and stuff. So I'm starting to write a lot of stories. I'm just trying to find the best, most interesting stories to put in there. I'm trying to get it all done by the end of this year, but it has literally we're probably a year and a half plus into it already.
Yeah, but that's the kind of project you really want to nurture and sort of get right first time,
True. The thing is, I just don't want everybody that's in it to be dead when it comes out, and that's starting to happen. I hate to say it, that's starting to happen. Like Johnny Z just died, and he's in the book a lot. There's a lot of stuff about Johnny Z in there, and I really had hoped that he would have a chance to see it, and of course that won't happen now.
Yeah, we're living in times where those sort of strikes are getting nearer and nearer.
Yeah.
So unfortunately.
Well, a lot of that for me is age too. I'll be 56 this year, and when you cross into the 50s, it's just that starts to happen more frequently.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, a little story from my side. My first contact with your music was actually through a let me get this right, a sampler called Stars on Thrash.
I remember it.
Came out on Roadrunner, I believe.
That's right. What was on there? Opinionate? Was that Opinionate?
Opinionate. Awesome track, and which immediately sort of, and I think it wasn't long thereafter where a friend of mine sent me a taped copy of Control and Resistance.
Oh, wow.
And because it was taped and you don't have all the infos, but I just said, like, that's the voice. That's the same voice. That's it. And, but why different band? So, but anyway, we were sort of isolated down there in Southern Africa, and we didn't have all the paraphernalia and sort of infos, and well, you didn't have blabbermouth then anyway. So,
sure. Different time.
Anyway, that's how I sort of got attracted to it, and I've been following Hades and Watchtower ever since. And only recently did I find out that you've been very prolific with the bands that you've been in. I love the Silent Assassin work.
Thank you.
Really nice. That's like more power metal.
That's all Mike LePond. I mean, in that band, he writes all the lyrics, he writes all the melodies. He lets me embellish, like whatever I want to do, he lets me do. But he kind of has the structure and the skeleton of each song laid out. And he's totally, obviously, into that kind of power metal stuff, you know?
No, but really nice blistering stuff. I really enjoyed that. So, is there any chance of you revisiting Hades? I mean, probably not with Daniel Lorenzo being firmly in, Cassius King now?
Yeah. Dan and I, you know, we communicate on email, and we're civil toward one another, but we're not really tight. And okay. I could not imagine. I mean, I've been in, obviously, many rehearsals and stuff with Hades and all those guys. And, you know, the later years of it, it just isn't fun. And, you know, at my age, man, I'm only doing music if I really dig it. And I do like the stuff Mike LePond writes. I like that, so I do it. It's not the lyrical kind of stuff I would write if I was writing lyrics, but it's cool. And again, he lets me kind of do what I want and free flow with it. And then I have my band Level Fields, which that is like my creative world. You know, me and Marco, the guitar player, we're kind of the two drivers of that band. And he's my muse, right? So he comes up with music that inspires me to write lyrics and melodies and harmonies and stuff like that. And that I love doing. So it's difficult because two guys are in Germany and my bass player is here in New Jersey with me. But we all get along well. And one day, hopefully, maybe we'll play together. But for me, playing live, like I sat in on a friend's band at a bar last week and I sang Man in the Box by Alice in Chains, you know. So I still get out there and I still sing and stuff, but I haven't done a lot of original stuff. Probably the last real thing was the Silent Assassin show we did, which is probably 2 or 3 years ago now, here in New Jersey. It's the only show we ever did, and I think it went really, really well. I played that room a lot, and it was definitely the most people I've ever seen in it, whether I'm there as a fan or as a performer. So Mike and I really promoted the hell out of that thing for like 6 months, and it was killer. But as far as bringing back, you know, the old bands, I don't really talk to a lot of those guys. When we went and played Headbangers Open Air Festival, gosh, that's got to be like 12 years ago or something. That was really kind of the breaking point for me because Dan had booked that festival and then bailed out on it a couple months before it. I had to scramble a band together, and I think we did okay, but it really wasn't Hades. You know what I mean? The only guy that was in Hades for real in that band that particular show was Ron Lipnicki, the drummer. Who was on Damnation with us, and Kevin Bolenbach had played a lot of Hades shows, our bass player from Nonfiction, so he played bass. But other than that, it was Jack Frost from Seven Witches, Sean Tarr, who used to be in TNA back in the day, and it really wasn't Hades per se, but that whole thing really just set the tone because it just was kind of a bad falling out.
Okay. I find it amazing that because I think about it in my sort of from my point of view, I've always also been active musically for many years, but I find that at my current age and just the life situations, if I reflect on that, I find it amazing that musicians still go out and actually do the touring and you know, and then having to get home again and sort of. You can't live off the band, really. Right. It's crazy. And then sometimes I see these billings here with 6 bands in one night, and I think, how does it pay? It's just sort of
Well,
crazy.
it generally, I mean, unless you're a major act, it generally doesn't. But that's why you got to do the music for the love of the music. You know what I mean? Because you're not doing it for the payday, which I guess eliminates any of those, like, posers, so to speak, that did it for that. I mean, heck, that's why and I'm just starting to write about this in the book, actually. That's why we came up with Resisting Success. Dan came up with that name because we were like, apparently deliberately resisting success because the bands that were making a lot of money back then were like glam bands, and we refused to do that kind of stuff. We didn't like that kind of stuff. We wanted it to be heavier and more intricate, and that's kind of where Hades went. And as soon as I joined, that's where the direction of the band sort of went. Not because of me joining, but just because that's where it was kind of going, But you got to love it.
Yeah, absolutely, it has to be a passion. But getting back to your lyrics, that's also always been something that's really that I found cool about your music. And it struck me the other day how relevant some of them that still is today.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
Especially Mayday in Kiev. Wow.
Well, that's crazy. Whoever thought that? And those aren't my lyrics. The Watchtower guys, they already had that song done. I didn't write those lyrics.
Okay.
The only lyrics I ever wrote with Watchtower were we did the EP Concepts of Math Book 1, and I wrote Technology in Action, the lyrics for that song.
Okay.
But yes, I mean, Mayday in Kiev, God, who freaking would have thought this would be happening again,
And then if I look at Opinionate and with today's cancel culture and everything, it's so, yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But with a lot of the thrash bands, I think they had a lot to say back then, which still applies.
Yeah, I agree.
Definitely.
I try to keep my lyrics usually socio-political and personal, and I try to keep them universal so they can mean a lot of different things to different people. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, but that's kind of where I come from.
Okay. Yeah. So you obviously went on with Dan still in nonfiction?
Yeah, well, so we had a falling out. We've had many falling outs over the years. The final one being that Headbangers open air thing. That was, like fire and ice and oil and water, I guess, in a way. But I guess that also kind of, that electric kind of connection is what made some of the good stuff happen between us too.
I wanted to say,
yeah, for sure. It brings out some good things. Believe it or not, there are some good results of it. But yeah, so we fell apart back then. We broke up on tour in Europe with Hades. I had already had the invitation, ironically, through Jason McMaster, the singer of Watchtower, to come and audition for them. So as soon as I got back from the tour, I went down to Texas, auditioned, got the gig, obviously, and then like a month or so later, we were back on a plane over to Germany to make Control and Resistance in Berlin. And that's even before the wall was down. So it was a really interesting time to be in Berlin.
Correct.
It literally came down a month after we left. So it's
that must have been surreal for you, in that split city.
It was because we went through Checkpoint Charlie. We actually had to drive all through East Germany to get to Dortmund to play a show and do a press day. And that was very eye-opening, as you can imagine. As you don't have to imagine, you probably lived it at one point, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very cool experience. But when we got back to America and we were thinking about touring and stuff, Dan actually helped us book some shows with Watchtower with his initial version of nonfiction, which was Danny Nastasi singing from Mucky Pup and Doggy Dog. And we played a few gigs with them. And then when we got back to Texas and we were looking to do some more, unfortunately, Ron Drozambek had fingers that needed surgery, and that really sidelined him for about 3 years. And we didn't know how he might not have ever played again. You know what I mean? We didn't know what was going to happen. I had moved all the way to Texas from New Jersey, which was obviously a huge adjustment. Although I loved Austin. I thought Austin was great. I ended up moving back because Dan had sent me a nonfiction demo. I don't know what the reason was with the split with Danny Nastasi. Maybe it was Doggy Dog or something. I don't really recall.
Other obligations, yeah.
But the singer spot opened up basically. And I really liked the first nonfiction demo. It had like the My Way on it and a few different songs. I forget the other ones, but I remember thinking while I listened to it, wow, this is what I would have done to it, because Danny's not like the singer like I am. We're very different kinds of singers. And I was like, man, I would sing more like this. And I think it was almost like a Soundgarden-ish kind of thing, but definitely more metal in its roots. So, that's kind of what led me back to Jersey. And then, yes, I did move back in with Dan because we were roommates. We worked day jobs together for years, and we toured in the band and played. So it was a lot of intense time around each other. And I think it was probably a little too much.
Yeah, yeah.
I
can imagine.
Yeah.
And I mean, just here from the German scene, I often hear or read in magazines, Watchtower. Is there ever going to be another follow-up, full album? Can you give us an update there?
Yeah, for sure. So like those guys, they all three of them live in Texas, but they don't ever really jam together. You know what I mean? They're not like an active band. So I guess that makes it easy on me because I'm up here anyway.
Okay.
But we have pretty much the material for the second part of that EP. So book 2, Concepts of Math, book 2. I've got one song in particular that I'm still working on, but it's really, really, I mean, it's Watchtower, right? So it's not like just riffing and jamming to a riff. It's like math homework,
Yes.
And you gotta really, for me anyway, I'm not a musician, and I don't think on the level that those guys think on in terms of time signatures and key changes and just complex riffs. I need to ingrain that into my brain and then kind of feel what I think the voice should be doing. And I kind of do think that the voice in Watchtower is what brings a lot of listeners in that might not like that kind of technical stuff, because I try to make the voice a little more
absolutely,
like easier on the ears, so it's more approachable to the listener. So it's a bit of a struggle with those guys because they want to quantize my vocals and make them like drums, like perfectly in sync with every single thing that's happening in the song at every single moment,
No.
And I don't sing like that, you know what I mean? I like sing I hold notes, and I can add some notes and stuff. So
that's what I thought. I mean, not that you're very similar bands, but another singer that I always think is so unorthodox. He does not sing normal phrasing, but he gives songs character, and that's Sean Killian of Violence.
I knew you were going to say that.
There's this sort of way all over the place, but it makes it so interesting,
Right. I agree. It's very different. It makes them stand out. Even if you don't love it, it's different. And I would definitely put myself, I don't think I sing like Sean Killian, but I put myself in the category of a love or a hate voice, like I don't think there's a lot of fans out there that go, Alan Tecchio, he's okay. They either hate it or they really, really love it. And I'd prefer to be that kind of an extreme singer in terms of fans' appreciation, rather than just an okay guy who gets by,
Yeah. Rather that than being a sort of copy of, or in the similar vein of so many that are already out there,
Right, exactly. There's so much has been done vocally with metal, it's like, it's hard to kind of be yourself. And I'm always trying to push it, and try to get better at singing. I never think I'm good enough for whatever. Maybe when I was young, I might have, honestly. I definitely had a big head in the first Hades album because we got some really killer reviews when it first came out. I remember, oh my God, Kerrang! Magazine had done a thing on us, and they had written that I made Rob Halford look like Tiny Tim. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm better than Rob Halford. Who's probably like my biggest influence, aside from Robert Plant and Bruce Dickinson or whatever. Like, I really thought at 19, like, wow, I'm on that same level because of that review. And that was Malcolm Dome that wrote that. And then the bad reviews of the people that really hated my voice came out. And that kind of level set me. But it took a few years, for me to realize you can't listen or read any reviews. You got to do what you do. Got to do what you do. Be confident in what you do and happy with it. And people are going to love or hate it no matter what. So
yeah, take that too seriously. It'll just dilute all your attempts. It's kind of
exactly.
It'll hinder you.
And you'll start doing things for other reasons that the people that outside of you want, and I went through that with some of the bands I was in where we had managers and then producers that wanted me to change how I was doing certain things. And it was like, no, man, I'll take the advice to a point where it makes me a better singer and feel better about myself, more confident. But I'm not just going to go in that direction. I mean, I remember we had our nonfiction's management sent me to a vocal instructor in New York City who had done work with Sebastian Bach and Bon Jovi and like all these big guys. And he was freaking expensive as hell. I forget what it was, but He wanted to fully change my vocal approach in terms of my breathing and my note formation and everything. And I gave it a shot for a while. And then finally I was just like, no way, man, this is really changing what I do in a way that I don't like. It doesn't
Yes,
feel natural,
yes,
you
yes.
know? So I bailed out of that, but
No,
it happens.
good that you did.
Yeah, I
Well,
know.
I count myself amongst the people that really love the voice, and also the material, almost everything. And I've got a lot of catching up to do as far as bands are concerned. And absolutely,
If you haven't checked out Autumn Hour, the band that I did in 2009, you should check that out if you don't have that.
I saw that on Metal Archives, and sort of saved that down as a link. So I need to check it out still.
Do. It's a concept record. And that was the first band that I actually put together myself, like all the players, because I've always like joined a band that had certain players, and they usually had like a leader in the band, like Dan, for instance, for Hades and Nonfiction. With Watchtower, it was kind of me and Doug leading the charge, but generally I joined something where it was already existing. In that band, I handpicked everybody, and the criteria was you have to be really good on your instrument, obviously, but you also have to have unique original ideas with that instrument. There'll be no telling you what to do. Like, I'm not telling the bass player just pound an E here. I want you, Mr. Bass Player, which was Clint Arendt, who's in Level Fields with me now, just to do whatever he thought the bass should do in that song. No holds barred, no holding you back, no directing them what to do. We would work on arrangements of the songs, but they were really good. Like Justin German, the guitar player, they were really good at hammering out very workable arrangements, and I didn't have to tweak too much at all. But it was the first time I was behind the mic in a studio and didn't feel the pressure that I felt with all the other bands I was in. When that red light goes on for recording, it shifts something in your brain sometimes, and there's a pressure that it comes on me anyway. I don't know if it does everybody, but for
No,
me,
I get what you're
yeah.
coming.
And it would affect my performance like dramatically, and a lot of times in bad ways. And I look back and I listen to some of the stuff I laid down that we kept in Hades and Nonfiction, and I'm definitely pitchy in certain points. We never should have kept those tracks on there, but that means that I went through those tracks like a million times, and that was the best I could do. And the pressure was just too much, and I was like, "Fuck it, just keep it,"
Yeah.
But I would never do that again. Like now, you probably can't see it, but I'm in my little vocal booth studio, and here I got. You probably can't see it, but I got a microphone up there, and just a little basic garage band setup. It's nothing fancy, but I can take as many takes as I want in here and get it exactly the way I want it. And then when I double all of my vocals, so I can take my time doubling everything, and it makes you, I think, have a much better delivery and performance because you don't feel that pressure. It comes off of your back.
Definitely, that's one of the pros, I think, with the technology and how it's changed. I mean, it's crazy. I was not long ago talking to Randy Burns and Bill Matoya, and how these huge Neve consoles and everything have sort of vanished into thin air, and now it's everything in a box.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's cons. I mean, with a lot of productions coming out these days, a lot of newer thrash bands or metal bands, I'm often very put off by the sound.
Okay.
It's just too perfect. It's too clean. The drums sound like Tupperware. It's like sampled, and no. And but the flip side is, like you said, now you can really at your own time record when you're in your comfort zone and get it out.
Yeah, no, it's a great thing. It's totally liberating. And I have to give props to Danny Sabo from Hungary. I did a record with him called Mind's Mirrors. I think they've only released like one song off of it, but all the songs have been done now, shoot, probably over 10 years, and they haven't seen the light of day. And I'm really proud with what I did with that because I wrote all the lyrics, all the melodies and harmonies, sang everything. And he was the one who encouraged me to get a microphone and a little M box. And he's like, man, he goes, you can do this stuff at your house. And I think at the time, man, I was probably in my early 40s or late 30s, and he was like 24 years old. And I'm like, this 24-year-old kid is going to school me on how to track. I was a little resistant at the beginning, to be honest with you. And then I started doing it, and I was like, oh my God, he's right. Like, I can do whatever I want, whenever I want. and I just have to make sure I provide good, clean tracks that aren't clipping all over the place, and then I'm good to go. And then I put it in the hands of somebody that knows how to do a proper mix, because I'm not a great mixing guy, you know.
Yeah. No, then you need the ears. That's the
Exactly.
Do you follow a lot of modern heavy music?
I mean, not a ton. I will tell you, I just did a motorcycle ride down to Virginia and West Virginia with some friends, one of whom was Sam Helsel, who was the first bass player that I ever played with in a band called Prophecy. And he was actually in Hades for a little blip of a moment before I joined Hades. But we went down there and, we have all music and communicators in our helmets. And I was listening mostly to Opeth and the heavier Opeth stuff before they got like really hippie. And I love that they got hippie and they keep progressing. I do love that about them. So I'm not one of those heavy Opeth guys that hates the new Opeth.
Okay. Yeah.
But because I just love that they keep stretching, they keep stretching out and pushing and blowing boundaries down. But the heavy stuff with the really subtle stuff, I'm talking stuff off of like Blackwater Park, and even Still Life. Still Life is probably one of my favorite Opeth records.
That's an awesome album, man.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much good stuff. And so I found myself listening to pretty much purely Opeth on that whole ride, and that was 1,500 miles total.
Wow.
So it was a lot of Opeth, but I also love Catatonia. And these aren't even brand new bands now. So, when you talk about new music, yeah, I'm a little out of touch, to be honest with you. I hear some stuff on my local radio station here, but a lot of it's that new kind of like, I don't even know how you describe it, where it's got the gruff vocals and then the really melodic vocals. Some of it I like. I mean, if it's got a good riff, I'm down for it. But if it's just a generic riff that you've heard a million times, and I know there's a lot of that stuff out there too, it doesn't pique my interest,
It's that kind of what I always call screamo. It's just that and then obviously, like you said, the melodic.
Right.
So that's I feel it's become very formulaic. It's sort of, I can almost predict where a song's going to go.
I totally agree. Every now and then I'll be pleasantly surprised. But you're right. A lot of times it's like, oh, I've heard that before.
Yes. So just to jump back a little bit, you said you recorded Control and Resistance in Germany.
Correct.
Who produced?
Interesting question. So Karl Walterbach had, the head of Noise Records. He had, we had a interesting round of, an interesting go with him. He had hired people that, initially he hired Alan Leeming, who had done a record with a band called Pariah, and he was a British guy. He came in, really nice guy, but just like a fish out of water. You know what I mean? Watchtower is just a really difficult band to wrap your head around. And he was like, let's go rehearse. Let me hear the songs in rehearsal, and let me get some ideas going. And I mean, Watchtower Rehearsal, if you're hearing it for the first time live, it's almost like unlistenable. You know what I mean? It's so complex, and you got me screaming over all of it. And you could see his eyes. He had no idea what to make of us. And that's right away when we got nervous, because we're like, if he can't get this at a practice as a producer, because he should have more mature ears for that kind of thing, how is he going to get it in the studio? And he didn't. And those guys are pretty straight, you know what I mean? Like, I think the drummer smoked a little herb, and maybe we would have some beers now and then, but it was definitely not a party band. And when we're recording, it's total business, you know what I mean? Like, there's no douche dicking around in the studio, or, you know what I mean? Like, you're there to work. And that record was really hard for me to track. It was not easy to sing all those parts. Everything was so elevated and high, like all the time. And I got a strong high voice, and it does have some longevity to it. But when you're banging track after track, and you're repeating tracks, and then you're doubling all those tracks, it really burns you out. And Leeming just didn't really know how to do anything with us. Like, he just didn't get it. And so he ended up having to be fired. And I was the guy who had to fire him. Like, the guys voted that I was the guy who had to fire him. And I don't know if it's because we both had the same name, Alan, but whatever. It was really weird. We had to basically send him packing back to England. And he wrote us this big long letter, like a handwritten letter, and he gave it to us the morning he was leaving, and he was very sheepishly like, "This has never happened to me before. I've never been let go from a project. I don't know what to do. And can I fix this?" But his fix, anytime we hit a wall in the studio, was, "Hey, let's go across the street to the pub and have a few
Oh,
pints."
okay.
And all of that's just like the wrong language for
Nope.
those guys. You know what I mean? Like I could go and have a nice beer, but not if I'm going to be singing. Like I want to be totally. I don't want alcohol in my throat because it dries me out. I just drink a ton of water when I'm tracking, and then I end up peeing a lot. But
You
you
could
know,
have
at least
probably pulled that with LA Guns or something.
I would say I would never work with one of those bands. You know what I mean? Well, they would never want me anyway, but I would never be able to hang. I would never be able to hang. And then you look at some of those guys now, like in this book I'm doing with Frank, Jersey Metal, we just did a piece on Quiet Riot. And of course, the two guys in that band that are dead, I'm not talking about Randy Rhoads because it's Carlos Cavazo era, Quiet Riot, were the guys that came into the merch guy's hotel room with a mountain of cocaine and just blew through it. And Frank doesn't do anything like that. And he was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe these guys." And now, of course, those guys are dead, you know? So
Yeah.
that partying lifestyle, it will catch up with you if you really go far. And the 80s, man, it was so decadent. Like they just took it to a whole
Right.
nother level, you know? But yeah, so I forget if I answered the question or not, but it was,
Yeah, but who salvaged it then?
oh yeah, thank you.
It
Yeah, yeah.
was
So
it wasn't Harris Johns.
no, actually, Harris Johns took me. He took me to dinner in Berlin one night. He just like showed up at the studio. He was like, "Hey, let's go out," and we went out and we just talked. And I picked his brain about Voivod like crazy. I'm like, "How did you mix?" I'm trying to think. I think it was Dimension Hatros.
Mixed Natros. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was like, I don't know if you know this story because it is so freaking cool. But they mixed that in one like run all the way through. The only time they stopped was to change the big reel of tape.
Wow.
So they mixed one song right into the next, like one big song, and they got completely stoned before they did that. And they just he got behind the board with those guys and they just hit go and freaking mixed it, which is the coolest story ever because that's a really, really great, I think, groundbreaking record for metal for
It
sure.
is. It is. Absolutely.
But Harris Johns unfortunately didn't get picked to do the job, and I wish he had because I mean that guy paid for my dinner. He was so nice, and then he was like, Walterbach's not giving you guys per diems because we didn't even have a manager then. We didn't even know to ask for per diems, so we were living on like fumes over there, like whatever money we had brought with us, and whatever money we got from the few gigs that we did, like in Dortmund, and we did play the Club Ecstasy in Berlin, and I think a couple other things, but that's the only way we got money. And we should have been getting like $25 or something a day per guy, to eat, but we didn't. And that was our fault because we just didn't really know to do it. But Harris Johns is the one who corrected me on that, was like, next time you fucking ask for that. And I was like, all right. So
Well, Walterbach's reputation precedes him.
oh, I know. I've heard way too many stories and I lived it. But I will tell you, to answer your question, we got rid of Alan Leeming, and then they brought in another guy from England to mix. Um, I forget what his name was. It might have been an Alan too, if I'm not mistaken. He had worked with like The Cure and Echo and the Bunnymen and like a lot of new wave kind of bands. And I did like that Carl thought outside the box like that back then. He was like, I want somebody to mix you guys that isn't doing all the metal records. And I'm sure that's why Harris Johns wasn't picked because he wanted somebody that was outside the norm of metal. Because the band was honestly kind of outside the norm of metal. And that English guy refused to have anybody in the studio when he mixed. And that was a real problem for those guys, because Ronjar Zombek, man, he had his hands around all that stuff. He is like an electronics genius, let alone a guitar whiz.
Yeah.
And he wanted to be there with his hands on the knobs. And that guy was like, nope, I'll make the mixes and then I'll give them to you to listen to. And all of his mixes were really thin sounding, like really, really too thin. The guitar had no punch. I mean, I guess esoteric, it was a good way to describe it. And if you want esoteric, he probably did a great job. But we wanted something heavy. We wanted something to like knock people over. And when we played it live, that really was, once we dialed it in and we had played a bunch of shows on tour and we became like a machine, then it was really like that's the sound we wanted, like what we got live. But we didn't really capture that. Even on the final, we didn't even totally capture it. But they brought in Thomas, oh my God, he's a German guy. Thomas, not shoot, I want to say Kupfer, but this is how Thomas Kupfer. It was he's on the credits. I'm sure we can look it up.
I need to have a look. Yes,
But he was a tough German man. Like he came in, and I'll never forget this. Like I would be in the studio singing my tracks, and he would record me. Then he would stop the tape and go again, and I go back in front of the mic and do it again. And then I finish my track, and he go again, and he would constantly hammer me like that. But he got me really like angry in the studio, and I think that helped a lot of my performances for some of the screams and stuff. So he knew how to get the right performances out of me. And then he and Ron are the ones who really put the final mixes together on that album. Ronnie actually stayed back when we went to Dortmund to play, and they flew him to Dortmund to get in for the gig because he needed to stay in the studio to finish the mix.
Awesome. Yeah, an unorthodox way of working, eh?
Yeah, it was very strange, man. It was very strange.
Hell, didn't was it who was the producer? Exorcist, William Friedkin?
I don't know.
Anyway, the final scene where the pastor falls with a demon inside him down the stairs and he's dead, and this other pastor was supposed to kneel by his side, and the director didn't get the sort of desired despair in his face, and apparently he proceeded to deck him a couple of times.
Oh, really?
To get that adrenaline look, So
yeah. I always like the story of the very first scream in Number of the Beast. If you've ever watched the making of that record, that the producer, I guess it was Martin Birch, right, just beat the living hell out of Bruce Dickinson, making him sing that scream over and over and over again until he was just so angry and mad that he let out the scream that you hear on the record. And he was just like, that's the one.
There you go.
Yep.
Wow. So is there any can you predict any live activity of any of the bands in the future? Especially, I suppose it would be Silent Assassins.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know Mike, like I said, is going out with Symphony X soon. So he's going to be, as long as he's on the road with those guys, and they're probably due for another record at this point. He gets kind of busy with those guys, and that's fine because I really need this time to finish this book right now with Frank. Because the book, I like every spare moment I have, and I mean, I have 2 teenage kids, so they're in sports and stuff, so I don't have a lot of spare moments. But when we finish this, I'm going to make some phone calls for my day job for work, and then I'm going to be jumping into the book too. Like I multitask all the time, jumping in and out of the book to get it done. When that's done, and I'm hoping it's by the end of the year, but I just don't know because it's been so long, then I can free up. So I am working on that Watchtower song, but it's on the back burner. I've got about probably 8 or 9 or 10 new level field songs that I have to complete. They're in various stages of completion. We just released one dedicated to Eric Wagner back in February. So that's the newest thing I've done. And then I did a song with this guy, Marcus, is it Pepfer? He has a band in Germany called, oh my God, I can't even think of the name of it now. He puts records together with different singers. You know what I mean? So I will only be on one. I'll be only on one track. Barnabas Sky. That's the name of it. Barnabas Sky.
Okay.
So anyway, he reached out to me. I'll get offers every now and then to write a song with somebody. And he had sent me a song. He goes, what would you charge for this? And I told him what I would want if I don't have to write the words and the melodies and harmonies. And I told him what I would want if I have to write the words and the harmonies and melodies. And I ended up writing the melodies, harmonies, words, and everything. And I made it a political song about what's going on in America right now, because there's so much polarization. And I think that the only way to really get on the same page, not that I'm going to solve America's problems, is to all kind of embrace what makes us similar and what we have in common rather than what differentiates us, because we're going to be different. And if you make just one group liberals and one group conservatives, I think that's just unfair to the people, because I'm very liberal in a lot of ways and I'm very conservative in a lot of ways.
It's always a mix.
Right. It just depends on what subject you're talking about. Right. So that's the lyrics. In fact, those are almost the exact lyrics for the chorus. And he sent me a song, this guy, Marcus. I didn't really like it. And I just told him, I said, I need to be inspired by it. Like, I'm not just going to sing to anything. I got to feel it and hear in my head what the voice is going to do. So the second song he sent me was a little better, but I still didn't really like it. And then the third song, I was like, this is the one. So I immediately started working on it. I knocked that song out pretty quickly. It was pretty fast. I wrote the lyrics fast. I tracked everything pretty quickly, but that's not going to come out until either the end of this year or early 2023. So I did that at the same exact session when I sang the In Trouble song with Level Fields that we dedicated to Eric Wagner. So I knocked out 2 songs that day, and unfortunately the other one won't come out till way later. But I feel like I don't know the live possibility to play with him. I doubt it. So I don't know really what's going to happen live wise going forward. I'd love to play a show with Level Field somewhere, but the logistics are just so difficult. And like you said earlier, if nobody's paying us a lot of money to do it, and
complicated, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if I were like a millionaire and I had tons of money, I would totally just do it and pay for it. But that's not the case.
Yeah, well, or it's the big festivals that offer you a fortune to come play.
Right. And the only way to really do that is, in my opinion, is to do a festival or 2 on a weekend, do some club shows, do another festival or 2 on another weekend, and then bail out. And the band members can make, a few grand each then doing that. The way we've done it, we walk away with a few $100 and maybe some merch money in our pockets. But it's about being able to do it. And I love the fact that there is actually still an audience, mostly in Europe, and especially in Germany, for what I've done my whole life.
Yes. I mean, we sort of. I just met up with a couple of mates this weekend, and we did a bit of a metal weekend, catching up and stuff, because we live quite far apart and everything. And we were talking about this whole pandemic and how it will probably still affect the bigger festivals. Some will probably fall by the wayside, and because there's been, let's face it, they came out of the ground like mushrooms.
Yep.
There's lots of them, and so it'll probably be the giants that stick around. And I've started to rediscover small club shows again. It's really awesome. Heathen and Toxic are coming around in June.
Nice.
And then it's really familiar. It's a couple of hundred people, and you can really feel the energy.
Yeah, no. That's why I love playing Keep It True so much. It was that's such a great festival. It's so intimate, and everybody's so cool. It's just like I've been lucky to play that a bunch of times with different bands, and that's one of my favorite ones for sure. Even though it's one of the smaller ones, it's just really cool, And when they come around, tell Jim from Toxic, the drummer, and Josh that I said hello, because I go whack with those guys.
Oh, I will do that. If I get a chance to speak to them, yeah.
Sure.
We'll do that, definitely.
Hey, and I love your shirt, by the way. I just laid in photos into this book that I'm doing of Sabotage from, I guess the record they were touring on then was Fight for the Rock, maybe. Something like that.
They're much loathed album.
I know, totally.
Not by me. I'm okay with all this stuff. So.
Yeah, no, I know, but I know they got panned with that one.
Yes. Now, if there is anything that you obviously I can sort of figure out all the links that would lead to all your projects, but if there's a specific link you would like me to push underneath the video in the description, then you must let me know.
Yeah, maybe just the Spotify link for the In Trouble song by Level Fields. Because I'm really happy with how that tune came out. I mean, it does sound very trouble-ish, and that was kind of the point. You know what I mean? Like Mark.
I actually had that.
Yeah.
I was spinning that this morning.
Oh, cool. Yeah, he wrote that riff, and he's like, "It sounds like trouble." He goes, "Should we dedicate it to Eric and do something?" And I'm like, "Absolutely," because I'm all about that. In fact, we were even thinking of titles for the next record, and I hate to be so morbid, but I was thinking like something like Songs for the Dead. And every song would be dedicated to somebody who died. I know it's very morbid, but I think it might be kind of cool. It's definitely very metal.
It's a sort of paying tribute,
Right. Like, for instance, on the first Level Fields record, I did a song for Michael Trenkert from Metal Blade, who was just like, I still can't believe that guy is dead. It just blows my fucking mind. And he was such a great human being, let alone a label guy for me and whatnot. He was just, anytime he came to the States, he had a lot of contacts over here, but he only called 2 to hang out when he was in New York, and it was me and Dan Lorenzo. and we would just go hang out with him and talk, and he was just a really, really nice human being. And it's just sad that he's so gone. And that's why I felt like I had to write that song, because we were in the middle of making all those songs at that time, me and Marco, and I was like, dude, I got to do one for Michael. Like, it has to be done. And I think that's the best motivation sometimes, not necessarily somebody dying, but something that hits you personally, you know?
Yeah, we were talking about that the other day as well. I mean, someone like Mike Howie,
All right.
where you
Right.
always, I saw him with several. Obviously, you can't judge. You know, it's such a short time frame that you see such a person on a stage or something like that,
Yep.
or backstage, what for that matter. But you would have never thought that he was in such a predicament.
Yeah. You never know, man. You never know. And I'm not going to blame everything on COVID, but I mean, you got to look at the residual fallout from that. Like, I had friends that died from it, and it's very, very sad. And I don't mean to sound so cold and heartless, but like, that's what diseases do, right? And they usually kill the weak, and the herd gets thinned, and it sucks. But the residual fallout from the disease and from all the lockdowns and from all the vaccine mandates and stuff is, I think, far worse, because those are people that aren't necessarily going to die, but they're committing suicide at record number rates. They're getting divorced. There's domestic violence. There's all kinds of crazy, like, alcoholisms through the roof, overdoses, and you can't say that that's not a part of what people experience by being told, stay in your house and don't talk to
Exactly,
anybody.
of course. I was thinking of what about people with depression, and
Of course, of
and
course.
then being isolated, and wow, it must be insane. Really.
Listen, it amplifies that, and I will tell you that my wife she's in education, but she has a second job where she counsels people. And I told her, I said, it's great because we really need the extra money, but it's sad because so many people need so much help now, you know? So it's like this catch-22. Like, I guess I'm thankful that she has the work there to do.
Yes, but it's also a sign of the times.
It's very sad. It's very sad. It breaks my heart. And obviously I don't know any of her clients and stuff, but she'll tell me stories about them, and it's just like, holy crap, like, that just sucks. And you don't know what it would have been like had they not been put through this, you know?
Yeah. No, speaking to Randy Burns, I mean, he lost his wife during COVID, and it's just wow. And then you kind of think, whew, heavy. And then, of course, this whole Ukraine thing is exploding, getting worse and worse. So
it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Millions of people coming this way, and
yeah, no, it's nuts. It's totally, like, I can't even wrap my head around it. I pay attention to the news here, but it's almost like when 9/11 happened, it happened here in my backyard, but people around the country, a few weeks later, like, they were totally, like, not attached to it anymore. You know what I mean? And we were still dealing with people going to funerals and stuff of people we knew. And it was like, this was a huge, big deal, but it really only affected us in a lot of ways because we were so local to it, It was sad. It broke my heart because I was just like, wow, man, like, it's a news cycle thing too. Like, when it comes off the news cycle, people just forget. There's so much freaking news going on that I don't even know if half of it's true anymore, but it's just to keep your mind going somewhere else so you don't focus on something.
I find myself avoiding the media more and more because I just feel that so much seems to be so ambivalent, and
yeah,
you don't know what to trust anymore. It's kind of because obviously Putin's side is painting a different picture to what the media here in Germany is painting, and
yeah,
I always think there's always two sides to a coin somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. Over here, it's pretty flagrant because we're having our midterm elections coming up in November, and I have felt this way about the media since the 90s personally. I really saw as a kid, we had Walter Cronkite was a big newscaster guy. And back then, I deliberately remember, even though I was a kid and I wasn't like paying attention to the news like I do now, that it was the facts that were spelled out for you. And then you were given the choice to decide what you thought about those facts. But in the 90s, when the Clintons were in office, I mean, in my opinion, those people absolutely had people killed. You know what I mean? There was bad. And all the Whitewater stuff that just suddenly disappeared into the ether when all the key important people that had totally identified Hillary Clinton as the central figure mysteriously died. They all mysteriously died. And it was like, that's not a story anymore. And it went off the news. And that's when I remember thinking to myself, that had to be like 1990, whatever. I can never trust the news again. Because every network had the same exact take on it. And I'm like, that's not right. Like there's got to be some dissenting opinion here and some investigation happening. And nothing happened. And I kind of just gave up on it back then.
I actually started, it dawned on me fairly quickly in my life. And that's when we were under apartheid in Namibia.
Okay.
So we were like a vassal state of South Africa.
Yeah.
So we were part of that regime. And back then we were told, the black man is the bad man and, he belongs there and he's good to come work.
Right.
And we better be off the streets by 6 p.m., otherwise
right.
That kind of stuff. And then during school, during my last 2 school years, the first black pupils actually joined into our school.
Wow.
And I remember coming home after a few days and just asking my parents, and so what was the big deal now?
Right.
Why couldn't this have happened before, And
right.
And that's when it was during those years and later, obviously, that I reflected on the kind of news that was on television. Yeah. When I would sit with my parents and watch the news, and you would have South African politicians, Bible in hand, sort of citing and obviously wrongfully quoting, the black, he will always be the water carrier, blah, blah, blah. He's supposed to be beneath us, and sort of legitimizing their rotten regime. It's and it was, at least in South Africa, it was rife.
Wow, that must have been wild to live through that.
No, it was insane. Looking back now, it gets the older I get, the more absurd it seems.
Yeah.
And now living here in Germany and with my girlfriend, and I've got 2 kids as well, and having to tell them that, it's like that's how it was. And they can't believe it.
I'm sure.
That you had entrances, whites only, blacks only.
Right.
Crazy.
Now, listen, it was like that here in America in the early 1900s. I remember my father. He always tells the story that when he was a kid, and he was born in 1928, so this was, I guess, in the 30s, there was a black girl who they insisted sat on the back of the school bus, and he insisted that she sit next to him in the front of the school bus, and she was like, I can't do that, I'm going to get in trouble. And he's like, no, you're with me, you're my friend, it doesn't matter that you're black, and you're going to sit here. And so my dad was a little bit of a rebel back then for that, but yeah, I mean, he saw that too, and it was a very, very different world. And it bums me out even more now, because now this whole narrative in America is that we're all racists, and I totally believe racism does exist. You can't say it doesn't.
Yes.
But I've never really looked at people other than, who they are, and if they're cool, they're cool. If they're not, they're not. I don't care what color they are. But now it's kind of heightened the awareness of that, and it's gotten me a little bit messed up from it, to be honest with you, because, I sell, my day job is I sell restaurants. I'm a real estate agent who sells restaurants and liquor licenses and stuff like that. And I had a restaurant in Englewood, New Jersey. Doesn't matter where it is, but there was a black woman who really, really wanted it, but she didn't have enough money. And, I felt really obligated to make sure I did anything she said, even though she didn't have the money, where normally I would look at a buyer and be like, look, you just don't have the money. It's okay. Save up more money and let's go for it. And anytime she was like, well, can I go look at the place again and do a walkthrough? And she would bring like different potential investors with her and stuff. And nobody ever made the play to back her up and give her the extra money. And eventually a black guy came in, buyer, and I walked him through, and he owns a restaurant in Brooklyn, one in Philadelphia, but he had the money. And I was telling him the story. I said, look, this woman wanted to do this restaurant here, really cool concept, but she just didn't have the bread. And he just looked at me and he's like, you either got the bread or you don't, and he was totally right. But I remember just being very highly sensitized in a way that, had all this news shit been going on about saying every white person in America is racist, I don't think I would have felt that way. You know what I mean? I would have been just like, hey, you don't have the money, sorry. But I did feel like a pressure, which was weird.
Yes, no, I can understand that. Definitely.
Crazy times.
Crazy times. Alan, you somehow need to, I know this is probably not, it's still a while on, but somehow I need to know when you're getting your book into orbit.
Are you on Facebook at all?
I'm on Facebook. Yeah.
Okay, so are we friends there yet, or?
We are. Yeah. You said yes.
Okay, yeah. Oh, that's right. That's right. So I'm gonna put something up there for sure when it's ready. What we're gonna do is when I have the finish line, when I have the goalpost in sight, Frank and I are gonna start like a GoFundMe page. I just don't want to take pre-orders on it until I'm almost there, because I run around, like, obviously I'm in restaurants every day, right? So I'm always got my laptop and I'm usually working on the book at some point. So many people throughout New Jersey and New York have been over my shoulder, like, "Hey, what are you doing? What is that?" And immediately they all want to buy it, especially if they were a part of that scene. Because there's a lot of fan pictures in the book, so there'll be a lot of like random candid shots where people, if they buy it, might look through and be like, "Oh my God, that's me!" You
It's
know.
me.
I know one in particular. There's a shot from Brooklyn when Hades opened up for Armored Saint, and there's a kid in the front row who's now my age. He's an adult, and we're still friends. But back then, I just knew him as a fan. But we stayed. I was always the pen pal guy who like wrote the letters to the fans when they wrote in and wrote them back and sent them stickers and stuff. So he was one of those guys, and we were pen pals for years. Still friends to this day. And I know when he sees this in the book, he's going to lose his mind. But all those people are like, "I want to buy it. I want to buy it. I want an autograph on it when I buy it from you." And I'm like, "I'll totally sign it. We're going to definitely do like events where we show up with the books and sell them and stuff. However, I don't want to take anybody's money until I know that I can actually deliver that book within a month or two. You know what I mean?" So there will be something on Facebook for sure. I'll definitely put it up there for pre-orders. And then when it comes out, we're going to have a lot of photos and stuff from these events that we're going to do, Frank and I.
Awesome. That's the right way, because I think then it's still top of mind somewhere with people that order, and yeah, because if it's too long,
I would be pissed off. Yeah, I would be pissed off if I gave. It's probably gonna have to charge like 50, $60 for it, because it's gonna be at least 500 pages, probably closer to 600, and it's just so many photos in it. It's just really really cool. But I would be pissed off if I paid $50 or $60, whatever it is, and then waited 6 months. You know what I mean, for it. So we're gonna try to tighten the timeline.
No, because it would be nice to hook up that news then with Rock Hard and
Oh yeah.
Dead Forever and those guys.
No, for sure. And Frank sells photos to all of those guys, and he has for many years. So he's got that PR angle kind of ready to go.
Awesome. Well connected.
Yes.
Good. Alan, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, my brother. Thank you. I appreciate the time.
I will, as I said, post all the links below, and I'll drop you a short message when it's up.
Okay, great. And then I'll share it too on mine.
Awesome.
All right. Cheers, brother.
Keep well.
All right, you too. Take care. Ciao.